Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 179th ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the Revel Advertising Studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. Snowy Springfield, Missouri.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How are you doing today, Kyle?
I'm great, Cam. We really appreciate that honesty from you about the weather.
Is it snowy enough out there for you?
Yeah, it's accumulated. We had to push our recording date back a day because we just didn't want to brave the weather last night. So sorry about that.
Yeah,
it was mainly me. Sorry,
no,
everyone.
the roads weren't great yesterday.
They were awful.
Much better today.
Cameron, we went to a concert a few days ago, maybe like 5 days ago. We were very, very close to the stage, and my ears are still muffled.
I'll try to speak up for you.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate that.
Yeah, we were third row for Tool in Tulsa. That was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful experience. Highly recommend it. And wear earplugs like I did.
Yeah.
Did they work? Were they good?
Here's the thing. I bought fancy concert-going earplugs, as you know, and I left them at home.
No.
I did. But a kind gentleman that was sitting next to me had extra earplugs, and they were just like the orange foam ones.
Yeah.
Pop those bad boys in. Perfectly fine experience, and my ears are perfectly well.
Man, I was hoping to get a review before I purchase some for myself. So.
Well, maybe one day I will remember to use them at an actual concert.
Well, probably the same one I'm going to with you. So I still won't get a review before I use.
Kyle, we've got some recruiting wrap up. National Signing Day Volume 2 has come and gone. So we get to talk about Missouri football's recruiting class. And then we're going to recap 2 basketball games, preview 2 more basketball games. But before we do any of that, if you're listening to this, don't forget to check us out on YouTube, subscribe over there, leave us a review on any podcast platforms that you might use. And if you want to support the podcast directly, you can do so on our Patreon page, patreon.com/Missouri Sports Pod. That gives you access to our Discord server. Been some really good conversation over there talking about recruits, and there's some really nice, funny folks over there, always making me smile. So if you want to be a part of that, patreon.com/Missouri Sports Pod. Speaking of support, I am supporting and sporting Luther Burden on my hoodie.
It's a nice looking hoodie. You're looking great.
Thank you. I like it.
Nice and warm.
It's very warm. It's warm in this room, and this hoodie is warming me even more. But hopefully I can keep it nice and clean since it is white. But so far, 10 out of 10 recommend. Thanks, Luther, for the hoodie that I paid for. It's really nice. Producer Cameron, you like the logo?
Yeah, it's fine.
I'll show it off for the camera. Yeah, I recommend it. Nice, warm way to support number 1 wide receiver in the country.
Speaking of the Discord real quick, the guys in the Discord, let's just say something bad happened. Maybe like maybe something happened with the audio of the podcast, and we had to start over and redo it.
Hypothetically,
yeah, because that's definitely never happened
right.
Or anything like that. They seem to think that I would be the one to flip the table if we got some bad news or something. Do you guys agree with that?
Oh yeah.
I feel like you would maybe like mentally flip the table in your head, and we all know that. So maybe that's what they're talking about.
Okay, that's fair.
But like you said on Discord, if/when the audio fails and we have to redo an episode, which we've never had to do, obviously, we would all 3 collectively flip the table.
Yeah, we'd do it together.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about Mizzou. First thing on my list here, we're going to talk about some news and stuff, but first things first, Tyler Beatty. He has impressed at the Senior Bowl. Just maybe the most talked about player from that. I don't know what all they do as part of the Senior Bowl. It's a game that they play.
Yeah.
But definitely an NFL scouting opportunity.
Yeah, they've been doing a lot of practices and stuff. Tyler Beatty, we know he's special. He's electric in the pass game. I've seen him doing really well on the run game and the pass game. He's been shaking dudes like crazy. Caleb Evans has had a really nice showing as well. I've seen a few clips of him shutting guys down in practices and stuff. They haven't played the game yet, have they? I don't know when that is.
I don't know.
But definitely worth tuning into to see a couple guys for sure. Is Allie Green playing in that?
No idea.
Okay.
Tyler Beatty, he slimmed down a little bit to look a little bit quicker in some of the drills and stuff, and he looks very fleet of foot.
Oh, wow. That was interesting little
phrase.
Yeah, phrase there. He's definitely slimmed down. I think maybe like 15 pounds or so. He's even faster than he was probably. And I think initially I would have thought Tyler Beatty would go probably 5th, 6th round, and that's still possible. And I mean, Mizzou fans might think that's insane to think that I would say that considering the season he had. But the NFL draft is just a little bit different when it comes to like college production, and the NFL draft is maybe even too heavily skewed on measurables and size and potential. All of those things are the potential of the asset, not what you've done at the college level. Tyler Beatty, obviously a fantastic college player. I definitely think he could be a solid player in the NFL level, especially. I think he could really own kind of that third down passing role for a lot of teams. So, but after this, after the Senior Bowl practices and stuff so far, I could definitely see him maybe going up to the 3rd or 4th round.
The Senior Bowl is tomorrow at 1:30.
Wow. So tune into that.
Thank you.
Watch the Missouri Tigers. I was just like curious, trying to find some kind of comp off the top of my head, and for like somebody that's already in the NFL.
Let me guess.
What?
Let me guess. I'm probably not going to guess, am I? Well, I was thinking maybe like a Giovanni Bernard or maybe a Keyshawn Vaughn or something like that, because they're kind of like the quicker third down pass catching backs.
Right. So off the top of my head, without thinking about it too hard, I typed in Austin Eckler because I just want to see the size comparison.
Yeah, that's probably a pretty good size comparison.
Google has Austin Eckler at 5'10", 200. So Tyler Beatty a little bit shorter on the official measurements probably.
He's probably about 200 though, isn't he?
Yeah. I think he slimmed down to like 195 for the Senior Bowl. I think he was playing at like 210
but
senior year.
Austin Eckler is probably one of the smallest, like heavy, like 3-down backs in the NFL. He's kind of a unique case. But
Yeah. I was just trying to think of anybody that actually is able to do that consistently. He's maybe still a little bit bigger than Tyler Beatty. You probably have to go, like you said, to somebody with a little bit smaller role on their team to find a more exact comp, and that's the reason why he probably won't go as high as he could.
Yeah, he's very undersized, even for a running back, but he's proven a lot of people wrong many times before. So
yeah, somebody will definitely take a chance on him. And with this impressive showing at the Senior Bowl this whole week, there's definitely going to be several teams that are hoping that he lasts until whatever pick.
Yeah.
All right, so National Signing Day Volume 2. Real quick, we're going to kind of go over some of the transfers that we've talked about previously, but now that it's solidly in place, we're going to recap that a little bit. But first, let's talk about just the high school players. So we did add 2 high school recruits to the recruiting class. Curtis Piegler, the offensive tackle from Alabama, 3-star according to Rivals, just really didn't have that many offers, and Mizzou kind of just swooped in and was able to pick him up. Basically the same situation for Carmicah Glass, linebacker from Louisiana. Both guys that were under-recruited. That's why they were still available this late in the recruiting process, but seem like guys with measurables that look good, tape that looks good, definitely potential to see the field at some point. Definitely not like throwaway scholarships or anything close to that, in my opinion. Right. So 2 guys that were definitely kind of under the radar pickups that I think will look good in the future.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to hit on everybody in your class, and but Missouri has brought in a really solid class ratings wise. They filled a lot of needs, I think, and you can afford to take a couple flyers on guys that are a little under recruited, that may not have the measurables yet. Carmichael Glass he's a little undersized for a linebacker. He's like 210 or something like that. So he's going to have to put on some weight, and that's perfectly fine. If he takes a couple years to get to the weight he needs to be. A lot of players that are even highly ranked need to do that. So I'm perfectly fine with taking a couple flyers here with these guys. Piegler is actually his size is not his issue whatsoever. He's SEC size already. So if I had to guess, obviously I don't know this for sure, but I would say Piegler was probably kind of related to the Deshaun Woods situation.
Yeah, I was going to mention that.
Woods didn't make it to Missouri. He was commit, but I think he had some grades issues, academic issues, and so he did not qualify.
Offensive lineman from Nebraska.
Yeah, he was #1 recruit from Nebraska, and so that definitely hurts the recruiting class rankings and everything.
He ended up at Wyoming, or he ended up committing to Wyoming. Still don't know whether he'll actually
and
get to Laramie.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. Is he committed to Wyoming, but still has the same kind of academic issues and stuff. Like those don't go away just because you go to a lower level of D1. So they maybe are more in a position to take a risk on an incredibly talented player, even maybe more so than Missouri was apparently. So.
But I would say, I don't know the inner workings of that situation specifically, but don't close the door completely on Woods eventually ending up in Columbia. It's not unheard of for a guy to go the JUCO route or go to a different school and then still end up in Missouri. There's a offensive lineman that we're going to talk about that did that exact same thing.
Yeah, if he really wants to if he really wants to be at Mizzou, he can probably be here in a year from now.
Before we get to the transfers, though, so the final class rankings on a couple of the big websites, 24/7 Sports has this Missouri class of 2022 at 14th in the country. Rivals has them at 17th and 6th in the SEC. I did want to point out MIZ Chris on Twitter. He pointed out that Missouri would have the #1 recruiting class in the Pac-12. The #3 class in the ACC, #3 class in the Big 12, and #4 class in the Big 10. So again, I feel like I've said it multiple times on the show, but 6th in the SEC, but 14th overall is kind of a crazy concept.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. And I don't think ESPN is known quite as much for their recruiting rankings and stuff like that, but still worth mentioning that according to ESPN, I think Missouri was 10th overall and 4th in the SEC. So for any of the services to, realistically have them ranked in that neighborhood is just unbelievable.
Yeah, that's still, no matter what service you look at, that's the most highly rated recruiting class Missouri has ever had.
Yeah.
And in the era where those services are doing the rankings, there's always somebody that's like, well, back in 1973, they had a #1 class. Okay, so let's talk about the transfers a little bit. It'll be nice to kind of put a bow on this transfer class. Now, it's not. There still is room to take a couple more guys in the spring, depending on how some of the spring practices go at Missouri and other programs. And there's
probably going to be a couple more departures. Just there's always a couple guys in the spring that realize, okay, I'm still not on the depth chart where I thought I was going to be by this time, and so we always see a couple more departures around, after the spring game.
But you want to take it away, however you want to discuss the transfers.
Yeah, we've talked about most or all of these guys at some points, but I just kind of wanted to take stock of where we were, kind of go through just quickly everybody that is coming in, and I'll just start with Joseph Charleston. He was a safety from Clemson. He's got, I'll just say how many years of eligibility they officially have, even though I don't know that they'll use all of these years.
Theoretically have,
Theoretically, he's got 3 years of eligibility. Played in 28 games at Clemson, and as a freshman, he had 55 tackles, which seems pretty impressive on where he's coming in and competing against some pretty talented recruits at a place like Clemson.
Absolutely.
I would probably look for him to have considerable playing time immediately. We've got the Hoppers. We've got Tyrone Hopper from North Carolina. He's got 1 year of eligibility. He's a defensive end linebacker, probably going to play end at Missouri. Played in 38 games at North Carolina and had 61 tackles and 4.5 sacks. Tyron Hopper is a linebacker from Florida with 3 years of eligibility. He played in 24 games, and last year was really when he appeared in every game last year, had 65 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, and 3.5 sacks.
15 tackles and like a sack and 1.5 tackles for loss against Missouri last year.
Oh, yeah. I actually didn't know that. He may single-handedly be the most impactful name on this list. Obviously, Jernigan might have something to say about that, but Hopper is a really talented young linebacker, and so, again, he's probably going to play a ton.
How much eligibility?
He's got 3 years. Yeah.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah. And speaking of Mr. Jaden Jernigan from Oklahoma State, he's a defensive tackle. He's got 2 years of eligibility. Last year, Oklahoma State had a fantastic defense. I don't think he was a starter, but he was very much a contributor. Had 22 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a sack last year.
Real quick, on Jernigan.
Mm-hmm.
What percentage chance would you say, or how likely would it be, in your opinion, that he just kind of blows up this coming season and leaves for the NFL?
Give me 30%. But, I mean, I haven't watched a ton of film on him, but I definitely think that's something that he's capable of for sure.
Yeah, and also it always depends on the player's situation. If they're satisfied with a mid-round grade going into the draft process or not.
Yeah, he's probably, I think he maybe had 10 or so quarterback pressures. I think he's probably mostly known as like a run stopper, but can definitely do both. Nathaniel Pete is a running back from Stanford. He's got 2 years of eligibility. Obviously, he's originally from Columbia. So a homecoming for Pete. He had 665 yards and 4 touchdowns on the ground at Stanford, and he was a really good kick returner as well. He was probably their most reliable kick returner. So that's mainly the guys who have a lot of college experience and have a lot of stats and stuff that they've put up in the past. We have a few younger guys who have like 4 years of eligibility. One of those is Ian Matthews, defensive tackle from Auburn. He didn't play at all at Auburn because he's only there for 1 year, so he's got 4 years of eligibility. Drayden Norwood is a cornerback who is coming from A&M. He's got 4 years of eligibility. He appeared in a couple games at A&M last year, and I think Missouri recruited him out of high school as well. Bence Polgar is a center from Buffalo. He's got 3 years of eligibility. I think he's probably going to be the starting center next year. And then his teammate, who came from Buffalo as well, is Tyler Stevens, a tight end who's got 3 years of eligibility. And last season he had 15 receptions for 157 yards and a touchdown. And last but not least is Dylan Spencer, who's the offensive lineman who started at Missouri. As a freshman, he started a couple games, transferred to Jackson State, and now has returned to Missouri. And I think he's got 3 years of eligibility.
Welcome back. Notably, you did not mention any quarterbacks in that list. I feel like maybe once or twice a week for the last month and a half, somebody on Twitter has mentioned like Coach Drinkwitz is now following X quarterback who is in the transfer portal. And Coach Drink himself was talking to reporters the other day, and he mentioned the quarterback position and basically said, I reserve the right to add a quarterback if I think it would help competition or depth, basically. So he hasn't closed the door on that. I would maybe put it at like a 15% chance that Missouri adds a quarterback that would legitimately compete for the starting job in the spring, but it's always possible. That's one position where I could see them maybe adding another player.
Yeah, I really think JT Daniels is probably the only quarterback that we're potentially going to add before next season. And JT Daniels did recently name Missouri specifically as a school he's in contact with.
It was the first school out of his mouth when he was asked.
So he is in communication with Missouri. There will be some competition for him for sure, but he's the former 5-star quarterback. It was really good at Georgia for a little while before he kind of had his job taken this past season.
Yeah, and is in no hurry to pick a school. He's going to be enrolled at Georgia through the spring semester. So don't hold your breath on that one, but might be a pleasant surprise a few months from now. All right, so overall, Kyle, with the additions on the player side of things this offseason, Are you feeling pretty good about where we sit?
Yeah, I think that I would still feel better if we could add another tight end, but really that's probably the only glaring area still that we really need some experience. I feel good about the Hopper addition at linebacker. He and Chad Bailey, I think, are going to be a pretty nice duo next year if they can stay healthy. I really like Jernigan, obviously. So yeah, I Charleston's probably going to be a good player too. There's definitely some immediate impact guys there. There's still some kind of project guys that can develop and be effective players down the road as well. So, yeah, the transfer portal is chaos, but I think it's fun. I think it's fun to be able just to add this many guys who, realistically every season we could be looking at this many guys to just fill in and to come in and fill some holes. So,
yeah, I mean. I'm going to put both of us on the spot here, but obviously we lost Mekhi Wingo and Daniel Parker Jr. There were some defensive players that were in the mix for playing time last year, but they weren't like solid every game starters. Am I forgetting anybody? Because I feel like with this group coming in, if we're kind of weighing the balance, I feel like we've gained more than we lost, even though Wingo especially was such a big hit.
Yeah.
I feel like on the whole, I feel better, than if we had just kept everybody that we already had, basically.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. The Wingo departure definitely hurts, but I think mostly the guys that left were kind of depth guys. I mean, Ish Burdine was maybe one of the other notable departures, but for the most part, Messiah Swenson, it was guys that weren't getting a lot of playing time and probably just weren't going to. So.
Yeah, some of them definitely still had potential, and you can actually see a little bit of that based on what school they end up at. I mean, right. I think maybe Jarvis Ware or maybe Ish Burdine, one of the defensive backs ended up at TCU. So, if you're going to another Power 5 school, obviously they're seeing something there that Missouri could have used at some point, but that's just the nature of college football at this point. Is we're going to be swapping players with other Power 5 schools every offseason for the rest of time.
Yeah.
Okay, I think you talked about, maybe we'll mention football staff changes, because it seems there's definitely were some changes, so we can recap that a little bit. It definitely seems like we're at the point where we don't expect any more changes. And speaking of what we can expect, Eli Drinkwitz did say they do not expect to sign any other high school players this class.
Yeah, again, kind of with the transfer players, we've talked about some of these the past couple months, but just to kind of take stock of where we are, we lost Aaron Fletcher to Arizona State. Casey Woods went to SMU, and Charlie Harbison is stepping away for a while, but he's still listed on the roster, I saw today. So I don't know if he's going to make a return at some point or not, but they did replace Charlie Harbison with Blake Baker, I think, was his replacement. He's going to coach the safeties. He was most recently at LSU coaching linebackers, but he's been a defensive coordinator at the Division I level. But anyways, I'll just kind of run down the staff here. We got Marcus Johnson is the offensive line coach, and he's also listed as the assistant head coach. Bush Hamden was coaching tight ends. He's now coaching quarterbacks. So he takes that responsibility off of Coach Drinkwitz's plate, which I think is big. Curtis Looper is at running backs. Jacob Piegler is the new wide receivers coach, and he was previously at Ole Miss. Is that most recently?
2 spots ago. He was at Texas State most recently, but previously at Ole Miss.
Yeah, and got to coach some really good players that are now in the NFL. Eric Link is special teams and tight ends now, so he's added tight ends to his plate. Steve Wilkes is the defensive coordinator. DJ Smith is the linebackers coach, and then he took on the recruiting coordinator title after Casey Woods left. Like I said, Blake Baker's safeties coach. And then we've got the defensive line coaches. Al Davis is the interior coach, and Kevin Peoples is a new addition to the staff. He's going to be handling the defensive end, like edge rushers.
Yeah, so in that same sort of press conference that Coach Drink gave a couple days ago, he mentioned Baker as being like the number 2 guy on the defensive side of the ball under Wilkes.
Okay.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, he's had, like I said, some coordinating jobs in the past, so knows what he's doing.
And then Coach Drinkwitz did talk about the decision to remove himself from the quarterback coach role and give that to an assistant completely. And he talked about, I thought this was kind of interesting. He talked about like he was having one-on-one conversations with the quarterbacks at the beginning of the season, and then he didn't like some of the things that were going on with the rest of the team. So he kind of diverted his attention away from quarterbacks to more of the team as a whole. And then he felt like that's the reason for, well, at least this is what he said, that was the reason for the lacking quarterback play in the second half of the season. So part of me sees that as him just kind of saying like, the buck stops with me, which I'm happy to see him kind of be like, you know, it was my fault when these things weren't going like they should. But I don't know, it just makes me wonder, like, are you saying that you really need to have your hands on every little piece of this for it to work correctly?
Right.
But at the same time, I remember how last season went, and obviously there was an issue on the defensive side of the ball. And if what Coach Drink is saying is correct, he started maybe investigating some of the issues in different parts of the team. And then, if you remember, there was a change on the defensive coaching staff. So it makes me wonder if he kind of sat in on more meetings, you know, paid more attention to the defense in practices and stuff like that, and then didn't like what he was seeing, obviously, from the defensive line. So they made a coaching change. So it kind of does add up with the timeline of the overall season. But, man, probably should have turned his attention back to the quarterback sooner if that's really what he thinks the issue was.
Well, that's kind of weird, too. I mean, so you're saying you stepped away from the quarterbacks and that was a bad thing, so you stepped away from the quarterbacks in the offseason? You're now permanently stepping away?
Well, I mean, the way I'm going to, if I'm trying to be a little bit charitable to Coach Drink and like think that he's on to something, there was no other quarterbacks coach. So if he was stepping away, they were not really, I mean, it sounds like they were not getting the attention that they needed from any coach at that point. If there's no offensive coordinator and he is the coaching or the quarterback's coach, and he's kind of, stepping away from that to work on the rest of the team, then who's there to talk to the quarterbacks every day? But he like specifically mentioned not having the like 30-minute one-on-one conversations every single day that he was having earlier in the season.
Yeah, I mean, we're thinking about in-game stuff, I think, when we talk about his, taking things off his plate because he has so much going on. But that's an example of off-the-field stuff, in the day-to-day things that I think will help alleviate all of the things he needs to worry about.
Yeah, because you want your head coach to be able to sit in on meetings from all the different position groups and be involved in those areas every single practice. Obviously, he's more of an offensive-minded head coach. He's going to call the plays and everything still. He's probably still going to have a close relationship with the quarterbacks. But, yeah, I mean, it makes complete sense to me to have a different coach be responsible specifically for the quarterbacks. Well, that kind of gets us caught up on the football offseason so far. Definitely the bulk of the changes are behind us now, so we can, from this point on, start kind of looking forward to the spring game, spring practices, and the start of another football season.
Which is this month, by the way. Spring practices start this month.
That doesn't make a lot of sense, but I guess better get started. All right, we are going to move on to basketball now. Missouri most recently lost to Florida, but before that they lost to Iowa State. Missouri had to go on the road to Ames, Iowa. They lost that game 67-50. It was kind of a weird game. Two completely different halves of basketball. More on Iowa State's end than Missouri's end, in my opinion. Missouri found themselves up by 5 points, 29-24, with 2 minutes left in the first half. Iowa State couldn't make anything early. Obviously, part of that's going to be Missouri's defense, but they were just ice cold for most of the first half. And then Iowa State scored 8 points in the final 2 minutes of the first half and went on a little mini run there, and then went on a not mini run, a 21-3 run early in the second half, and that was the end of the game.
Yeah, it's like the final score was pretty much exactly what we predicted. But after the first half, I thought Missouri played pretty well, better than I thought they were going to. The final 2 minutes, like you said, were awful, and coach got a weird technical, and it was just that. Like, honestly, sometimes I think a technical foul can be helpful to like fire up the team, but I genuinely think that was a terrible time to get a technical.
Like right before halftime, when it's whatever momentum you might, whatever energy that might bring is just gonna.
Right, and it was on top of a foul too, so Iowa State just shot 4 straight free throws, I think, and then got the ball.
Yeah.
So that was awful. But anyways, I had completely adjusted expectations after that first half, and was like, okay, Missouri, might give them a game all the way to the end here. And then that was a terrible oversight by me to change my expectations. Yeah. And Iowa State looked more like what we expected in the second half. Really pesky on defense. They turn you over like crazy. And we talked about that last week. I mean, they force turnovers and have like non-forced turnovers too, right? Yeah. Like, I don't even know.
Their pressure basically just
makes you mess up. Yeah. Yeah. And they did that a lot.
Even though Missouri shot 36% from 3, they attempted 3 more free throws than Iowa State in the game.
That's a first.
They turned the ball over 18 times, Missouri did. And they were also out-rebounded 31-27. What's going on with the rebounding? Like, I feel like early in the season, Missouri was winning the rebounding battle every single time. And now it's like completely flipped, where especially the defensive glass, I feel like obviously we saw it in the Auburn game, but it's kind of becoming a trend that teams are getting second and sometimes third chances on one possession because Missouri can't secure the defensive rebound.
Probably because Jordan Wilmore hasn't played much.
That could be it. He's a rebounding machine.
He was really sucking up the rebounds. Is it because did Iowa State? How many threes did they shoot?
I can tell you.
I mean, it seemed like they were shooting a lot of 2s. It seemed like they were efficient in the second half from 2. They weren't having those long rebounds from 3, long missed 3s.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of, for them, it was night and day from the second half to the first half. Yeah, they shot 18 threes, only made 6 of them. They were 18 of 35 from 2. Tyrese Hunter, 7 of 10. Yeah, they were much more efficient from 2. But, they had 1.08 points per possession compared to Missouri's 0.8. Yeah. So, the efficiency was... And I would say that was probably pretty even in the first half because Iowa State wasn't making anything, but then they just kind of turned it on in the second half and went to the free throw line more in the second half than the first half.
Yeah, I just kind of feel like we're maybe a little too reliant on Kobe to get every single rebound, and it seems like he's kind of maybe hit a wall a little bit recently. He's been so good this year, but in the last few games, it seems like he hasn't been quite as hot.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up after the Florida game, but since you mentioned it, I would say he's slumping for sure. Since the incredible 30-point, 13-rebound game in the win against Alabama, he's had 6 points, 7 points, 15 in the win over Ole Miss, but then 6, 8, 3, and 8.
Yeah, and obviously when he's your best player, but I'm sure his performances are incredibly reflective of Missouri's wins and losses. I'm sure those are very correlated.
Yeah, in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of Missouri's 8 wins, he was the KenPom MVP. So, if he's scoring single digits, it's probably not a good night for the Tigers. Not much to reflect on the Iowa State game with it being a non-conference game and the final score being pretty much exactly what we predicted. The turnovers, it's just crazy to have 18 turnovers. And Missouri, the 18th turnover came with 5 minutes left in the game. So it's lucky that wasn't a 20-plus number.
Yeah, they scored some garbage time points, really. I mean,
yeah.
I think they were lucky to even get to 50.
Yeah, I think they made a shot at the buzzer that was literal garbage to even hit 50.
Yeah.
In this one specifically, Kobe Brown with 3 points and 4 rebounds in 34 minutes of action. That's not going to cut it. We can just move straight into the Florida game. Missouri lost to Florida 66-65. Definitely a game they should have won. Not exactly like some of the epic collapses that we've seen in the Conzo Martin era. We've seen some crazy stuff happen as far as like double digit and like nearly 20-point leads evaporate in the second half. This one wasn't so bad. Florida started out super hot. They were like making every three. They ended up shooting, I think, like 45% from three. 10 of 23 from three. They were making everything early. I kind of thought the way the game was going, Missouri might just kind of lay down and it was kind of a weird game. The game time got moved. There was barely anybody in the arena. I thought they might kind of get down by 8 points and then just stay down by 5 to 10 points the rest of the game. But that didn't happen. Missouri showed some heart. They chipped away at the lead until they got a lead of their own at 41-40. And then there was a very ugly stretch of basketball. There was a 7-minute stretch in the second half where Florida did not score a single point. And that's some Mizzou type stuff right there. But even then, usually it's like they've gone 7 minutes without making a field goal. Usually there's a free throw in there somewhere. Florida was like 0 for 3 or 0 for 4 on free throws during that 7-minute stretch. But Missouri was only able to get it to an 8-point lead during that Florida drought. And that's something we've talked about before with this team, especially some of those, I'm using air quotes, hot starts that Missouri has gotten. Like I'm remembering the Texas A&M game. They started out on a 12-0 run, I think. But it was like 6 minutes of game time. It should have been 18-0. But Missouri's offense isn't consistent enough to take advantage of those droughts by the opponent. Florida reversed course. They started chipping away at the Mizzou lead until it was a one-possession game with about 5 minutes left. And then just kind of went back and forth there, about a one-possession game right until the end. And it really looked like Missouri had this one. It was a little sloppy, as it tends to be when you don't have a point guard late in the game. But Boogie Coleman was fouled, not an intentional foul, but they fouled him to put him to the line so that Florida could get the ball back. And he looked confident. Like he was not trying to get rid of the ball to a better free throw shooter or anything like that. I felt good about it. I thought he was going to just walk up there and knock down 2 free throws, but he missed the front end of the 1-and-1. And then
it's unfortunate that we were even in the 1-on-1, honestly, at that point.
Yeah.
The foul disparity, but I sorry to interrupt you.
No, it's okay. That was a pretty big deal in this game. I can't remember exactly what I think. Florida, Appleby just like ran down the floor and scored a layup. And then they maybe traded baskets there or something. I feel like there was a play where Kobe just randomly was wide open for a layup, or he like had that kind of dish around the defender's back to.
Yeah, I think that was a little earlier on.
Okay. Well, there was some.
Boogie's missed free throw was really late.
Yeah, you're right. Well, let me back up to that because there was a stretch there where the teams were kind of just going back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
But still, Missouri was having to work hard on their offensive possessions. Florida was bringing their defense out past the 3-point line. That's been a trend that the opponents have been doing to Missouri on defense, but they were still executing. I mean, Amari Davis knocked down a couple huge 2-point jumpers. Kobe had that dish to Ronnie DeGray down low for 2.
Really nice.
But then Florida was scoring in like 5 seconds.
Just matching him.
Driving to the basket, making it look really easy.
Yeah.
But then there at the very end, Deshaun Gordon fouled Tyree Appleby literally like
as far away from the basket as possible.
Yes. And, of course, he goes to the line, makes 2 free throws. Then a couple possessions later, Appleby's driving again. And I can see Missouri fans having a gripe on this foul call because Appleby definitely, like, shoved his arm between Gordon's and then went up for the shot.
I thought that was a fair call.
I did too. What else are you going to do there?
Yeah. Appleby, of course, makes everything, all the free throws down the stretch. I think he was 10 for 10 in the game.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that gave Florida a 1-point lead, but Missouri still had 2 chances. They had 2 shots to take the lead in the final 7 seconds of the game. Amari Davis got the inbound and drove all the way into the paint, but had kind of a weird off-balance he just kind of flung it up towards the rim. But the shot got blocked out of bounds, and then with like 2 seconds left. There was a inbound play with multiple options, but it ended up going to Coleman for 3. It missed everything. Game over. Florida wins. Missouri loses by 1.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how this game hurt as bad as it did. Like, I don't know how I'm still so emotionally invested, because, you know, after the Auburn game, especially a few weeks ago, I was kind of devastated to lose that. This one stung pretty bad too. I mean, it's just games that Missouri is leading for 70, 80% of the game, and, you know, have late significant leads and just find a way to lose. It's just infuriating.
Yeah, especially in a game like this Florida game, coming down the stretch, there had to be multiple things that had to happen. All of them had to happen for Florida to win this game.
Yeah, with like Missouri having a 2 or 3 point lead with like a minute left, you know, and then all the weird foul situations.
If Boogie makes 1 of 2, if he just makes the front end,
I think they win.
If they play slightly better defense on Appleby on some of his drives, if Gordon doesn't foul 80 feet from the basket, and they have to use, you know, even if Appleby drives and scores a layup that possession, he's still going to have to take 10 seconds off the clock. And that might be the difference in the ball game right there. Oh, man. It's just...
Again, one of these games where Florida attempted quite a few more free throws. I think they made 10 more, attempted, looks like, 8 more
than
Missouri.
Yeah, Florida shot really well. 22 for 26 free throw. Missouri 12 of 17. Yeah,
I predicted a Missouri win in this one, too. I felt pretty good about that prediction.
I know. Yeah, I really was like, yeah, we nailed that, because I just piggybacked off of your prediction.
Yeah, I think you were afraid to speak anything out loud, because I think you secretly disagreed with me. But
I was trying to be hopeful, and it almost worked. I needed to be more convicted in thinking they were going to win.
Well, apparently not, because they lost.
Well, I'm saying maybe then they would have won.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
That's how that works.
That would have made a difference.
Kobe Brown with 8 points in this one. Really nobody could get anything going consistently on offense for Missouri. I think, I don't know what I want to see more from them on offense. It's like, nobody
more made shots. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, nobody can be consistent. And there were stretches in this game where Coleman was knocking down shots, and he's kind of
deep 3.
Yeah, he has shown that he can knock down shots, and Davis has shown that he can knock down those.
Yeah, Brazil played a lot in this game too, which is good to see. Yeah, I mean,
he had some really good plays.
I feel like you're right. I mean, these guys, it's like they're kind of starting to do the things that we thought they were going to do. It's taking a little bit longer than we hoped, but it really does look like Amari Davis is like ready to step into a scoring role. He's hitting more of those shots that, you know, we saw him make in his previous stops in college and stuff. He's looking more like the player that I imagined. But none of these guys still are consistent. And, you know, Trayvon Brazil, and he's a freshman, so you don't really expect him to be consistent yet. You know, he's shown flashes, but at the same time can disappear for a while. It seems like, and with Kobe kind of hitting the wall recently, it seems like we've got, you know, 6 or 7 guys that at any time can be really solid, but just can't seem to do it consistently enough to win consistently.
Yeah, and this game is... I mean, just looking at the box score, it's 100% free throws.
Yeah.
Like, it's ridiculous. Missouri shot pretty well. They shot 54% from 2, 38% from 3.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, no game the rest of the season am I going to say Missouri should have shot more threes. Yeah. Because this is right where I think they should be. Mm-hmm. You know, 15-ish threes a game is perfect in my opinion.
Yeah, honestly, that's the biggest disparity right now with them and the teams they're playing. Is it seems like they're attempting less free throws, making less free throws, and I'm not a basketball coach, but we need to be looking, you know, taking strong drives to the basket, getting fouled, that kind of stuff. Like, I think that, you know, we have guys that are athletic enough to drive and get to the basket and get fouled, and I don't know how you tell your team, hey, you need to get fouled more.
Yeah.
But
well, I think, I mean, that's a personnel issue for sure. I just feel like you see it when teams are extending their defense on the ball out past the three-point line. They're basically saying, I don't think you're good enough to drive to the basket successfully around me.
Yep.
And a lot of times they're right. And a lot of times Missouri doesn't even try because, I mean, our guards are not proficient enough at handling the ball on a crowded drive to the basket.
Yeah, Kobe's probably the best on the team at that.
Right, but when he's in that situation, he's always having to start from beyond the 3-point line. And so he will like get a nice first step on a guy or make a nice move, but then he's only to the free throw line. And he still has to keep creating, and then they just lose it. I mean, we've seen guys try to drive to the basket and just be out of control because they just don't quite have the guard skills to knife into the paint like that and finish.
Yep, I think we say it every week, but we're just so desperately in need of a competent point guard.
And you got to mention in this one, Florida shot 44% from 3.
Yeah.
So that's hard to overcome. And some of those shots were just ridiculous. Like they banked in a 3. They was like a falling away at the shot clock 3 that went in.
Yep.
They were just hot from deep. So now with that loss, Missouri drops to 8-13 overall, 2-6 in SEC play. Their KenPom rating has been pretty static the last week and a half. It's at 134, 171 on offense, 127 on defense.
Yeah.
It's not a good situation when both of those numbers are in triple digits.
Right.
I don't think there's another, maybe Georgia is the only other team that has both of those numbers in triple digits in the SEC. But honestly, there's not very many Power 5 conference teams that are in triple digits in both offense and defensive efficiency on KenPom. But coming up, we have 2 road games against Texas A&M and Vanderbilt. Obviously, we've already played A&M once this year. That was the game Missouri jumped out to a pretty nice lead, but A&M stole that one at Mizzou Arena. They won that one 67-64. But since then, they've lost 5 straight, including a home loss to number 100, South Carolina. So not a good loss for them. A&M is 68th in KenPom, 86th on offense, 54th on defense. And I wish I could tell you that we will see something different in this matchup than we did the matchup at Mizzou Arena. But what happened in that game is Henry Coleman was just pretty dominant on the inside. Missouri didn't have a big body that could keep up with him. He finished with 18 points, super efficient from the field. A&M got to the free throw line, of course. I don't know. I think with this being a road game and A&M is desperate for a win after losing 5 in a row, they're probably not an NCAA tournament team, but they definitely have more hopes of being one than Missouri does. But they would have to turn it on pretty quick and make some noise in SEC play down the stretch. So I think they're going to be motivated playing at home after some tough losses. They took Arkansas to overtime on the road during this losing streak. I don't know. They're pretty solid on defense. I think they're going to give Missouri trouble again. I think Missouri's going to turn the ball over a lot. I don't think it'll be a blowout or anything. If Missouri can get hot from 3, maybe they can keep this a game late. But I don't think Missouri will have enough on offense to win on the road at A&M. I think A&M will snap their losing streak. This is probably going to be like, I don't know, 63-57 A&M.
Yeah, I was thinking about a 10-point loss.
No other thoughts from you on A&M?
Not really.
They're going to get that season sweep. Yeah. Missed our chance at home.
I think so, yeah.
Then we have Vanderbilt, who is 11-10 overall, 3-6 in their 3rd season under head coach Jerry Stackhouse. They're 89th in KenPom, 141 on offense, 50th on defense. And if you haven't watched much Vanderbilt this season, Scottie Pippen Jr. is really fun to watch. One of the best players in the country. His usage is off the charts. He's the number 1 player in assist rate in the SEC, while also taking the 3rd highest percentage of shots of anybody in the conference. So he's pretty much doing it all for Vanderbilt. They are still not great offensively. They can be super inefficient. But one thing they do really well is get to the free throw line. So that's my prediction in that one. I don't think we're going to have anybody defensively that can slow down. I mean, Scottie Pippen Jr. has put up 30-plus points in both of their matchups already this year with Kentucky. So he's going to get his no matter what.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's closer to 20 points for him than 30. But even if you try to slow him down, he's really good at finding his open teammates for easy buckets. And they've got like 4 of their starters play like 70+% of the minutes. So they've got a really solid core of upperclassmen that they lean on. They've got a decent post presence. They've got some decent shooters. I mean, Pippen himself shooting like 34% from 3. I don't know. He's just like first team all SEC player. And I don't think Missouri will be able to slow him down. If this game was at Mizzou Arena, I would maybe predict this one pretty similarly to the Florida game. But with it being on the road, I think Vanderbilt takes it.
Yeah, I feel like Stackhouse has had kind of a weird 3 years at Vanderbilt, but this is definitely the best they've been since he's been there. They've got an offensive – they're ranked 141st in offense on KenPom, but I definitely feel like they can be better than that. They, like you said, they're kind of inconsistent. They kind of have swings, though, but they can get hot, and I think they could easily put up 80 points in this game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. They have a senior big man named Quentin Milora Brown, who is shooting 64% from 2, and he is just solid down low. Blocks a lot of shots, gets a lot of offensive rebounds. They've got another player named Miles Stute, who shoots 40% from 3. That's basically all he does, just spot-up shooter. And they've got another kid named Jordan Wright, who is a junior like Scottie Pippen, and not Scottie Pippen Jr. They're both juniors in college. You follow? Okay. Jordan Wright. He's like a forward who takes the next most shots, and he's like the big man and Wright are both guys that Scottie Pippen Jr. is looking to if a defense just collapses on him. He's going to be dishing it to one of those two guys. I was looking at Jerry Stackhouse since you mentioned him. I feel like people have been talking about him being on the hot seat.
Yeah.
But
I feel like he's a little bit volatile in like press conferences and stuff like that, which I think contributes to that sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Kevin Stallings was their head coach for like 7,000 years and took them to plenty of NCAA tournaments and stuff. And then Bryce Drew was there, but they just got progressively worse each of his 3 seasons. But I'm looking at Jerry Stackhouse on KenPom. He's taken them from 170 to 104 to now this year 89. So it's the right trajectory, just maybe not as good as fast as Vanderbilt fans would hope.
How many seasons was Drew there? Or what?
3.
Drew.
Yeah, Bryce Drew.
Bryce Drew, yeah. He was there for 3 seasons. Okay. For some reason, I was thinking he was there for a shorter amount of time.
His final year, they went 0-18 in conference play.
For some reason, I felt like his firing was like unwarranted, but that's pretty terrible, I guess. I don't know what I would have been thinking at that time if he had been there for 3 years and they went winless in SEC play. So
I mean, they went to the NCAA tournament his first season, but then just got worse and worse.
Interesting.
So you're thinking this is gonna be an ugly one?
I feel like Vanderbilt is, like I said, pretty inconsistent. I feel like we don't really know what team could show up. You know, I think Missouri could win this game, but I'll say probably 70% of the time Vanderbilt's winning this.
Yeah, I agree with you. How many points is Scottie Pippen going to put up?
I'll say he'll put up 24.
I'm thinking it's going to be like 28, unfortunately.
Well, either way would be a lot, I guess.
Yeah, those 4 points are going to make the difference, I'm sure.
He is the heart and soul.
Really fun to watch, though. If anything, if Missouri's just going to lose this game, you know, this isn't the best season for the Tigers. Watch some of these opponents that are going to be playing in the NBA. They're still fun to watch.
You think he will?
I think so. I think he could have gone last year, but his draft position was a little iffy. It's hard with some of these guys that have been around for a little while on bad teams putting up numbers, but I think he shows the skills and the shooting touch. I mean, his shot looks really nice. I think it'll translate to the next level. He's not afraid to shoot it from NBA range.
Yeah.
All right, is that it for this week?
I think that's it.
Man, hopefully.
I was hoping we would have a win to discuss today.
Maybe next week.
But the coach of the team, of Conzo Martin.
Yeah, I've heard of him.
Some would say he's on the hot seat. So.
Yes.
I think some people are probably just fine with a couple of losses this week.
Not us though. We want wins and a new coach.
We want the best of both worlds.
All right. Do you think that's it?
Yeah.
Special thank you to our Patreon supporters at the $10 level and above. Britt Treese, Brian Smith, Ryan Lee, Tristan, Ben Smith, Parker, Daddy JD, Luis Hernandez, Tim Keynes, and Tyler Harsel. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. You can find this podcast on Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. We're on Twitter at Mizzou Sports Pod, and you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
You can find our stickers on our online shop. We are sold out of t-shirts, so thank you guys for that. We're working on getting more. MissouriSportsPod.BigCartel.com.
You should buy our shirts when we get them back in stock, but in the meantime, you could check out a little Luther Burden shirt. Support the 5-star wide receiver. I had to explain to my wife why I was buying a random hoodie.
We are the recruiters now.
Exactly. Thank you everyone for listening. We will see you next week.